What happens when a CEO walks into his own restaurant, only to see a homeless man being turned away? Jason Carter adjusted the brim of his baseball cap, his face hidden behind a scruffy beard and thick glasses. He looked nothing like the polished CEO of a growing restaurant chain with 12 locations across the state. It had been years since he'd stepped foot inside one of his restaurants as a customer, and he was nervous. Reports had been piling up. Customer complaints about rude service, high employee turnover, and a noticeable drop in sales at a few locations. He was tired of hearing excuses from his regional managers and decided to see the truth for himself, undercover. This location wasn't the busiest, but it had been flagged for inconsistent operations. Jason walked in, blending in as just another customer. The smell of sizzling burgers and freshly baked fries hung in the air. The place seemed clean enough, but something felt off. Employees moved sluggishly behind the counter, and the manager on duty, identified by her name tag as Sandra, was scrolling on her phone in the corner. Jason joined the line, observing the staff dynamics. A young cashier, probably in her early 20s, seemed overwhelmed, juggling back-to-back orders while the others milled about. Before he could step forward to order, something caught his eye near the entrance. A man in tattered clothes, with a weathered face and a plastic bag holding his belongings, stepped hesitantly inside. He looked around nervously, unsure of where to go. Jason watched as Sandra immediately snapped to attention, not to help but to confront him. "Hey, you can't be in here," Sandra barked, her voice sharp and cold. "We don't allow loitering. Go somewhere else." The man raised his hands defensively. "I just wanted to see if I could get some water. I'm not causing any trouble." "I said no," Sandra cut him off, her tone now louder, drawing stares from customers. "Get out before I call the cops." Jason froze. The man's shoulders slumped as he muttered, "I'm sorry," and began to turn toward the door. "For you, a free like is easy. But for me, it is the greatest support and encouragement. For this video, can you give me 1 like and 1 subscription? Thank you very much." "Wait," Jason said, stepping out of line. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried enough weight to make Sandra and the others look his way. "This doesn't concern you," Sandra snapped, folding her arms. Jason ignored her and walked up to the man. "Sir, you said you just wanted water?" The man nodded, his eyes tired but grateful. "I'll leave right after, I promise." Jason turned back to Sandra. "It's just water. Why couldn't he have a cup?" Sandra rolled her eyes. "We're not a charity. People like him scare off paying customers." Jason stared at her, anger bubbling under his calm exterior, but he kept his voice steady. "I'll pay for whatever he wants. Get him a meal, too." Sandra looked ready to argue, but reluctantly nodded. Jason ordered a meal for the man and handed him a cup for water. "Take your time eating," Jason told him. "You're not bothering anyone." The man's gratitude was evident as he sat quietly in a corner booth, head bowed over the tray. Jason turned his attention back to Sandra, who had returned to scrolling through her phone. The young cashier from before approached Jason as he rejoined the line. "Thank you for doing that," she said softly, glancing nervously toward Sandra. "I wanted to help him, but I didn't want to get in trouble." Jason's heart sank. He could see the fear in her eyes, the hesitation. He introduced himself as Mike, keeping his cover intact, and asked for her name. Jason turned back to Sandra. "It's just water. Why couldn't he have a cup?" Sandra rolled her eyes. "We're not a charity. People like him scare off paying customers." Jason stared at her, anger bubbling under his calm exterior, but he kept his voice steady. "I'll pay for whatever he wants. Get him a meal, too." Sandra looked ready to argue, but reluctantly nodded. Jason ordered a meal for the man and handed him a cup for water. "Take your time eating," Jason told him. "You're not bothering anyone." The man's gratitude was evident as he sat quietly in a corner booth, head bowed over the tray. Jason turned his attention back to Sandra, who had returned to scrolling through her phone. The young cashier from before approached Jason as he rejoined the line. "Thank you for doing that," she said softly, glancing nervously toward Sandra. "I wanted to help him, but I didn't want to get in trouble." Jason's heart sank. He could see the fear in her eyes, the hesitation. He introduced himself as Mike, keeping his cover intact, and asked for her name. Sandra barely looked up. "We're slammed today, so just shadow Emma for a bit. She'll show you what to do," she said, gesturing toward the young cashier from the day before. Jason nodded and moved toward Emma, who offered him a nervous smile. "Hi, Mike Wright. I didn't know you were starting today," she said, her voice kind but hesitant. "Yeah, last-minute thing," Jason replied, scratching the back of his head. "Guess I'll be hanging out with you for now." Emma nodded and began showing him the basics of taking orders, handling the register, and managing the flow of customers. It wasn't long before Jason noticed how much she was juggling plates, running orders to tables, and even picking up trash left behind in the dining area. "Does it always get this crazy?" Jason asked her during a brief lull. Emma glanced over her shoulder to make sure Sandra wasn't listening. "Pretty much. We're short-staffed most days, so it's just a lot." Jason frowned. "Doesn't Sandra help out?" Emma hesitated, then shook her head. "Not really. She says it's not her job to do what she calls grunt work." As the lunch rush intensified, Jason saw what Emma meant. Sandra barked orders at the staff when things got hectic, but made no effort to assist. Instead, she criticized Emma for being slow, even as the young woman worked tirelessly to keep up with customers and orders. At one point, a mother with 2 young children approached the counter to complain that her order was incorrect. Emma quickly apologized and promised to fix it, but Sandra interjected, rolling her eyes. "Maybe if you'd ordered it right the first time, this wouldn't be an issue," Sandra said, her tone dripping with condescension. The mother's face reddened. "Excuse me, I don't think that's how you should talk to a customer." Sandra shrugged. "I'm just saying we're busy and mistakes happen. You don't need to make a scene about it." Jason stepped forward, his fists clenched at his sides. "I'll take care of this," he said, giving Sandra a pointed look. Then, turning to the mother, he added, "I'm really sorry about the mix-up. We'll remake your order right away, and it's on the house." The mother softened slightly and nodded. "Thank you." As Emma worked on remaking the order, Jason pulled Sandra aside. "Do you think that was an appropriate way to handle a customer?" he asked, keeping his tone even. Sandra crossed her arms. "Look, if you're going to survive here, you need to learn that people like her just want to complain. We don't have time to cater to every little issue." Jason stared at her, biting back his response. He needed to see more before confronting her fully. By the end of the shift, Jason had seen enough to confirm his suspicions. The staff was overworked, Sandra's leadership was non-existent, and Emma was single-handedly holding the place together. As they closed up for the night, Jason helped Emma wipe down tables and restock supplies. "You're really good at what you do," he said. Emma gave a small, tired smile. "Thanks. I just try to keep things running smoothly. Someone has to." Jason hesitated before asking, "Why do you stay? I mean, with everything going on here, I'm surprised you haven't looked for something else." Emma shrugged. "I need the job. My mom's sick and I'm helping with her medical bills. Plus, I actually like working with people, even if it's hard sometimes." Jason nodded, his respect for her growing. "You deserve better," he said quietly. That night, Jason sat in his car, staring at the notebook filled with his observations. He felt a mix of anger and guilt. How had he let things get so bad? He'd built this company from the ground up to be a place where employees felt valued and customers felt welcome. Somewhere along the way, he'd lost sight of that. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. Tomorrow, he would reveal who he was and start making things right. But first, he needed to sleep on how to handle Sandra and how to reward Emma for her unwavering dedication. The next morning, Jason parked his car a block away from the restaurant, his nerves on edge. Today was the day. He adjusted his disguise in the rearview mirror, tugging at the fake beard and smoothing down the brim of his cap. He'd spent the night replaying everything he'd seen and heard, and it was clear that Sandra's behavior couldn't go unchecked. But it wasn't just about her. He had a responsibility to fix the culture he'd let erode. When he walked into the restaurant, the morning shift was just getting started. Emma was already at the counter, greeting customers with a tired but genuine smile. Sandra, however, was late. "Morning, Mike," Emma said, her voice brightening when she saw him. She handed him an apron. "Looks like you're back for more." Jason chuckled lightly. "Guess I couldn't stay away." As the morning rush began to pick up, Jason noticed something different in Emma's demeanor. She seemed sharper, more on edge, as if she was bracing for something. He didn't have to wait long to find out why. Sandra stormed in 15 minutes late, holding a cup of coffee and looking annoyed. She didn't bother to apologize or explain her tardiness. Instead, she immediately started nitpicking. "Emma, why is that table still dirty? And who's supposed to be restocking the sauces? This place looks like a mess," Sandra barked as she tossed her bag onto a counter. Emma paused mid-order, her face flushed with embarrassment as a customer looked on. "I'll get to it as soon as I can. I've been handling the counter by myself," she said quietly. Sandra scoffed. "Excuses don't run a restaurant. Just do your job." Jason's jaw tightened, but he stayed silent, watching the interaction unfold. It was clear Sandra had no intention of contributing to the workload. Instead, she continued to hover, pointing out minor flaws while ignoring the growing line of customers. At one point, an older man in a wheelchair rolled up to the counter. He struggled to reach for his wallet, fumbling with the zipper on his bag. Emma noticed immediately and stepped out from behind the counter to assist him. "Take your time," she said gently, crouching down to help him retrieve his wallet. Sandra, however, rolled her eyes. "Emma, we don't have time for this. There's a line." Jason couldn't take it anymore. He stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. "She's doing the right thing. You can handle the line if it's such a problem." Sandra turned to him, her eyes narrowing. "Excuse me, who do you think you are, telling me how to run my restaurant?" Jason held her gaze, his patience wearing thin. "I think you've made it pretty clear how you run things, and it's not working." Before Sandra could respond, Emma returned to the counter, her face pale. Jason gave her a reassuring nod and stepped back, letting her finish the transaction with the man in the wheelchair. As the morning wore on, Sandra's attitude only worsened. She criticized Emma in front of customers, ignored basic tasks, and even snapped at a young kitchen worker for asking a question about the schedule. By the time the lunch rush hit, the tension in the restaurant was palpable. Jason decided it was time to act. He slipped into the back office, where he knew Sandra kept her personal belongings. He removed his cap and beard, smoothing his hair and straightening his posture. When he stepped back into the dining area, the transformation was immediate. For a moment, no one noticed. Then Emma's eyes widened as she realized who he was. "Jason," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Jason nodded. "Emma, could you gather everyone in the dining area? I need to speak with the team." Emma quickly did as she was asked, her expression a mix of confusion and relief. The staff gathered near the counter, whispering among themselves. Sandra stood off to the side, her arms crossed and a skeptical look on her face. Jason took a deep breath before addressing them. "I'm Jason Carter," he began, his voice steady. "I'm the owner of this restaurant and the entire chain." The room fell silent. Sandra's face turned bright red while Emma's eyes filled with tears. "For the past 2 days, I've been working here undercover to see what's really going on. And let me tell you, I've seen a lot. Some of it good, and some of it unacceptable." He turned to Emma. "Emma, you've shown me what true dedication looks like. You've gone above and beyond to take care of customers, even when you weren't given the support you deserved. I can't thank you enough for everything you've done." Emma's lip quivered, but she managed a small smile. "Thank you," she said softly. Then Jason turned to Sandra, his expression hardening. "Sandra, your behavior has been unacceptable. You've disrespected employees and customers, failed to lead by example, and created a toxic work environment. I can't allow that to continue." Sandra opened her mouth to protest, but Jason cut her off. "This isn't up for debate. You're fired, effective immediately." The staff gasped, and Sandra's face twisted in anger. "You can't just—" "I can," Jason interrupted, "and I will. You've had plenty of chances to do better, and you've chosen not to." Sandra stormed out of the restaurant, slamming the door behind her. Jason took a moment to compose himself before addressing the rest of the team. "Things are going to change around here, starting today. We're bringing in a new manager, someone who values teamwork and respect. And Emma, I'd like to promote you to assistant manager. You've earned it." Emma's jaw dropped. "Me? Are you serious?" Jason smiled. "I've never been more serious." The staff erupted into applause, and Emma wiped away a tear. For the first time in a long time, the restaurant felt hopeful. Jason spent the rest of the day talking to each employee individually, listening to their concerns and ideas. By the time he left, he knew the restaurant was on the path to becoming the kind of place he'd always envisioned. Over the next 2 weeks, Jason threw himself into reshaping the restaurant. He returned often, no longer disguised, listening to staff, observing operations, and ensuring his promises turned into action. The transition wasn't easy. There were moments of pushback, particularly from employees who had grown used to Sandra's unchecked behavior. But Jason was adamant the culture needed to change. The first major shift came with the announcement of the new manager. Her name was Maria, a seasoned professional Jason had personally vetted from one of the company's other locations. Maria's reputation for fostering teamwork and fairness preceded her, and she arrived with a calm confidence that immediately set the tone. On her first day, Maria gathered the team. "I'm here to support you," she said, standing at the center of the dining area. "We're going to make this a place we're proud to work at, but it's going to take everyone's effort. Leave the past behind and focus on what we can build together." Emma, now wearing her assistant manager badge, stood beside Maria, though she still looked nervous about her new role. Jason had noticed her growing into the position. She'd started speaking up more, delegating tasks, and even mentoring some of the younger employees. Jason decided to stop by unannounced one afternoon to see how things were progressing. He walked in, blending with the lunch crowd, and immediately noticed the difference. The dining area was lively but organized. Maria was behind the counter, helping during a busy stretch, while Emma moved between the register and the kitchen, assisting where needed. Jason approached the counter, and Emma greeted him with a bright smile. "Hi, Jason. What brings you in today?" "Just checking in," he said, glancing around. "Place looks great. How's it been going?" Emma grinned. "It's been a lot of work, but Maria's been amazing. She's teaching me so much, and the team's really coming together." Jason nodded. "I'm glad to hear it. You're doing a great job, Emma. I hope you know that." She blushed slightly, but her smile widened. "Thank you. That means a lot." As Jason sat at a corner booth, enjoying the improved atmosphere, he watched as a young man in a stained hoodie walked hesitantly into the restaurant. He seemed nervous, his eyes darting around as if expecting someone to confront him. Jason tensed instinctively, recalling the incident with the homeless man weeks ago. But this time, the response was different. Emma noticed the young man and immediately approached him with a warm smile. "Hi there. Can I help you with something?" The young man hesitated before speaking. "I don't have much money, but is it okay if I just get some water? I'll stay out of the way, I promise." Emma's smile didn't waver. "Of course. You're welcome to sit wherever you'd like, and don't worry about the cost. I'll take care of a meal for you." She motioned to a booth. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll bring it out to you." The young man's eyes widened in disbelief. "Really? You don't have to do that." Emma nodded firmly, her kindness unwavering. "It's no problem at all. I'll be right back." Jason leaned back in his seat, a wave of pride washing over him. This was exactly the kind of atmosphere he had envisioned, a place where people felt valued, no matter their circumstances. Later that day, as the lunch rush died down, Jason called Emma into the office. Maria joined them, curious about the impromptu meeting. "I saw what you did earlier with the young man who came in," Jason began, looking at Emma. "It reminded me of why I started this business in the first place. You treated him with dignity and kindness, and that's exactly the kind of leadership this place needs." Emma shifted in her seat, clearly flattered but a little overwhelmed. I just wanted to do the right thing." "And you did," Jason said firmly. He reached into his briefcase and handed her an envelope. "This is for you. It's a bonus for your hard work and for setting the right example." Emma's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. She gasped, covering her mouth. This is too much." "It's exactly what you've earned," Jason said. "And it's not just that. Starting next month, you'll also be enrolled in a management training program. I want to invest in your future here because you've more than proven your potential. I saw what you did earlier with the young man who came in," Jason began, looking at Emma. "It reminded me of why I started this business in the first place. You treated him with dignity and kindness, and that's exactly the kind of leadership this place needs." Emma shifted in her seat, clearly flattered but a little overwhelmed. I just wanted to do the right thing." "And you did," Jason said firmly. He reached into his briefcase and handed her an envelope. "This is for you. It's a bonus for your hard work and for setting the right example." Emma's hands trembled as she opened the envelope. Inside was a check for $5,000. She gasped, covering her mouth. This is too much." "It's exactly what you've earned," Jason said. "And it's not just that. Starting next month, you'll also be enrolled in a management training program. I want to invest in your future here because you've more than proven your potential." Tears welled in Emma's eyes, but she quickly wiped them away. "Thank you, Jason. I don't even know what to say." Maria, sitting beside her, smiled warmly. "You've earned it, Emma. You're going to do great things." As Jason left the restaurant that evening, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The changes were already taking root. Employees seemed happier, customers were returning, and the culture was shifting towards something he could be proud of again. Before stepping into his car, he turned back to look at the restaurant. It wasn't just a business anymore. It was a reflection of the people who worked there, their struggles, their triumphs, their humanity. And Jason knew he'd never let himself become so disconnected again. For Emma and the rest of the team, the future looked brighter than ever. And for Jason, it was a powerful reminder of the impact one person can have when they choose to lead with compassion.